Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Well-Appointed Mystic. My name is Anna, and today I have my purchases, embarrassingly so, for the month of July. And pretty much everything that I purchased this past month was a mass market deck, but I do have two indie decks, and it turned out, based on these piles, that I ended up getting 5 Oracle decks. Is that right? Yeah, 5 Oracle decks and 3 Tarot decks. So I won't go into a ton of detail about these because I know that there are plenty of online reviews and walkthroughs and that kind of thing. But I thought I would share with you sort of where my head has been at in the Tarot and Oracle space. First thing, I finally, because I spent the month of July working with ocean and mermaid energy, using the Mermaid Tarot and the Sisters of the Sea, I went ahead and purchased the Whispers of the Ocean Oracle deck, and this is another Blue Angel deck, and this makes me bananas. There was no reason to make the book, like, these are filled a page and a half. This book could have been made smaller and the same size as the deck, and then the box made to fit the deck. This makes me crazy. So, like, even if I were to make a bag for this, I would want a bag big enough to hold the book as well. So it's just going to be janky and weird. So I'm very annoyed with this whole arrangement. And this doesn't even have anything to do with the cards or the quality of anything. Just whatever design decision was made seems a little flawed. I have not spent a lot of time with this deck. I have flipped through it. The guidebook is all done in black and white on cream colored stock, which looks like it will be an easy read. The book was written by Angela Hartfield, and the artwork was created by Ekaterina Golovanova. Pretty name. So the reason I was interested in this deck was that the Sisters of the Sea and the Mermaid Tarot was all mostly people focused, and so getting into the Whispers of the Ocean, this was more animal based, and I do seem to gravitate towards animal based decks, so I thought that this would be a great way to spend a little more time with ocean animals. So even though I'm not necessarily going to be continuing my work in August with sort of mermaid energy, I wanted to go ahead and have this deck ready, sort of in the wings, should I want to jump into sort of mermaid and ocean energy again. I don't know if, like, as I've said in other videos, I really like when there's a keyword and then a couple of sort of the message and a couple of keywords. These longer statements, I'm not sure how I will feel about them while I work with them. It does give me the sensation that maybe there's enough information on these cards that I won't necessarily need to carry the guidebook with me or have it handy all the time, since there is quite a bit of messaging here. I do sort of wish that they had indicated on each card what animal it was. I suspect that looking in the guidebook will tell me exactly, like, I'm assuming that's a bottlenose dolphin, but, like, just in case, and for some of these other creatures, I realize it's a crab, but I don't know what kind of crab, that kind of thing. So it would be nice to have had that information included in the information on the cards, but that's just me. So anyway, so this was my sort of filling in the gaps in my ocean themed decks. I know a lot of people have other decks that they like to use, but this was the only other one that sort of visually really appealed to me. Next up is the Everyday Witches Familiar Oracle, and I have the Everyday Witch Tarot. I don't think I have the other Oracle deck in this series, but I was just taken by a lot of other people talking about how much they really enjoy this deck on YouTube. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. Again, this is very animal focused. The guidebook is full color. This was published by, I think this is Llewellyn, yes. The backs look very similar to the backs on the Everyday Witch Tarot, but they're, instead of usually, I think there's just one black cat on the back, you have a cat, you have a fox, and a turtle. So I think these are already starting to bow a little, but you know, welcome to the humidity of the Midwest. Move this over, get it out of the way. But yeah, so I think these will be interesting to try. It looks like there's suits. So we have earth with sort of more earthy animals, and then air, which will probably be more birds and bats, and a bumblebee, butterfly, dragonfly, spider. And then it looks like there's about 9 or 10 of each. So then fire, we have cat, so probably sort of more like deserty creatures, rooster, firefly, chameleon, wild boar, hawk, red fox, and then water animals. We have dolphins and turtles. See, this was what I was asking for in the other deck. So there's a lot of water characters in here, and they do actually say what they are. Koi, penguin, heron, octopus, otter, beaver, and then spirit animals. So there's not very many of these. We have a dragon, a unicorn, a phoenix, and a sphinx. So it's a nice mix of animals, and I think if you like to work with animal energy, or sort of looking for sort of animal guidance, this will be kind of a fun deck to use. The illustrations are very well done. I've always liked the artist who works on these, Elizabeth Alba. So yeah, so I didn't mean to go through the whole deck, but it's not a very big one. What, about 44 cards or something? So yeah. All right, next I will talk about the Talisman Oracle, and I mentioned this in a previous video. I purchased this specifically because I am actually teaching a class at the end of August at the San Francisco Pen Show about sigils, and it finally, I don't know, clicked in my head that this is basically a deck made up of sigils. Essentially, they call them talismans. I feel like at a certain point those terms could be interchangeable. The guidebook has each sigil much larger and easier to see than is on the card. So I do feel like this is a deck where if you are not a big fan of sigils or talisman markers or anything like that, you could really just lean into the image and the keyword and kind of go from there. I forgot about the technical details. This is a US Games deck, and it was created by, I found her name, oh, here it is, Nora Paskaleva? I don't know. Sorry if I mispronounced it. I'm doing my best. But I believe she created the art and wrote the guidebook, which I think is very cool. I like when it's sort of the vision of one person. That seems very similar to what people do sort of in the indie world. So I ended up being surprised how much I like this, despite the fact that these cards are very slick and very shiny. The messages overall are quite sort of positive and uplifting, which apparently I need hug decks and things that are going to be kind and sweet to me. I think this would work really well with a deck, with a tarot deck that you might have that tends to not pull any punches. And so this might help give a little softer sort of closing to your reading. And I do know that they the set included an envelope full of vellum papers so that you could trace your own sigil from here. but the sigils, the actual sigils on here are often very, very tiny. So I suspect that if someone wanted to trace them, you would be better served to sort of trace them from the book than because you can kind of see them better and get a better feel, unless you just want to use this to draw on. I think it's a clever idea and really interesting to include that and give people an opportunity to sort of do something with the sigils on each of these cards. I'm not sure that it entirely works because the actual marks are so tiny on the cards, so people would really have to use the guidebook to kind of pull that off. But anyway, so this was the third Oracle deck that I purchased this month. The edges of this deck are sort of a black foil, which is really pretty. I immediately scratched mine, so be warned. And they are super, super slippery. I dropped the whole deck earlier and played, 44 card pickup. Okay, next up. All right. I was really excited about getting this. This is the Green Witch Oracle deck. It's created by Erin Murphy Hiscock, who has done the whole Green Witch series, and it was illustrated by Sarah Richard. I think the art is very beautiful. It reminds me of old botanical illustrations. The book looks beautiful and easy to read. However, what I started to notice going through is that there's not really any rhyme or reason as to how things are in the book. The cards don't have numbers. So you have altar, cauldron, moth, mushroom, sun, moon. So they're not even necessarily in alphabetical order to make things easier to find. So if you tend to use a guidebook to find things, this is not great. And I immediately look at this and say, there's space right there on each of the cards. Then a number could have been included, and then a number put in the guidebook right there. See that spot? It's just screaming to have a number so that you could find things like, oh, that's card 37, whatever. Anyway, that again is me being a fussy designer. And sadly, this is not the only complaint I have with this deck. So I went through this deck earlier just to look at it because I was really excited and kind of thinking I might use it this month. But what I realized was it doesn't feel like there's a real rhyme or reason to the symbols that were included in here. So I kind of grouped things together to start with. You have broom, walking staff, sickle, and then you have like preserve and mortar and pestle and salt and hearth and then cup of tea and then watering can and then cauldron and altar. And I just started to be like, I'm sorry, is like there's no indication that there's like, for lack of a better word, like suits, like tools versus actions versus herbs. And like I pulled this together because this was the first time I could figure out how to group them. Like there could have been like the suit of herbs, but there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards. I mean, I guess you could, if you wanted herbs, and then like there's pine tree, oak tree, mushroom. So you have 10 cards that could be sort of herbs and trees. But then you have moon and sun and earth. And then spring and summer, autumn and winter. Then you have things like fog, snow. But I think that was it. Like in the weather cards, you have fog or snow. There is no rain or wind or other weather related. I don't know. I feel like this deck was meant to have had more cards and maybe they ran out of time or they decided against it. So you have soil, roots, seeds. Oh, here's rain. Okay, so there is a rain one. Okay. Then you have, but still, it was all just, you had rain, snow, and fog. I don't know about you, but I have other kinds of weather. Sunny. Oh, I mean, I guess there's a sun card. So, I mean, okay. All right, maybe I'm being a bit of a fuss bucket. So then in the animals, there were 4. Bird, butterfly, bee, and moth. It's called the Green Witch's Oracle. I don't know about you, but I have more wildlife in my yard than this. You know, and I just live in a suburban neighborhood in the middle of the Midwest. So like bunnies and squirrels and possums and hawks, and we have all kinds of other animals. So mice. So then we have a little bit more in the tree kind of vibe. So there's like buds, leaves, trunk. I really did not mean to go through this whole deck, but just bear with me while I fuss about this. So, which maybe goes with some of the other planting, tending, harvest, hedge. Oh, and here's where, this is what really like was the nail in the coffin for me. There are 2 gemstone cards, carnelian and moss agate. I do not understand why there are only 2, and I do not understand why it is these 2. There's no quartz crystal, there's no obsidian, like, why these 2? So anyway, I just feel like the deck feels scattered and a little inconsistent. I was really hoping, when I had seen images before, that there would be like a lot of herbs, tools, gemstones, you know, I don't know. Anyway, that's my fuss. I'm a little disappointed. It's a really pretty deck, and if anyone has used it and is like, really on it, it's fine. Just use the deck and stop being a fuss bucket. Please leave that in the comments, because I really want to like it. I just feel like it just felt incomplete and a little scattered. So anyway, that's my take on that. My last Oracle deck is the Nocturna Oracle by Megan Weyerweeden. And I was so excited to get this. This is a beautiful deck. It does include, it's a linen finish. It has gold foil edges. It has a very short, to the point little guidebook. This is another one, because it's an indie deck, I'm not going to be a pistol about this, but this is another case where the guidebook is not in alphabetical order, nor are there numbers associated with each of the cards to make it easy to find in the guidebook. So there's my fuss. I don't mean to be a fuss bucket about it, but I really want to work with this deck regularly, and I would hate to not use it just because it does not include, like, it's hard to find stuff in the guidebook. Also, I feel like there's space at the bottom of each of these cards that these 3 keywords could have easily been included, and then the guidebook would have been a nice add-on, but not necessary to use on a daily basis. So anyway, those are my nitpicks, and I apologize, but this is such a beautiful deck. Her illustrations are gorgeous. I love them on these black backgrounds. I feel like this is going to be a great deck to work with in the darker months when I'm really missing nature and that kind of thing. There's animals and plants, and this is a case where, unlike the Green Witch, which I was fussy about which animals and which plants were included, I feel like there's enough variety here. Again, this also has like night sky, scallop. It has different plants. I could probably sort through this deck and kind of do the same thing that I did with the Green Witch, but I feel that this does it better. And part of it, I think, is because it is just plants and animals, and it has left out the besom and the walking staff and like some of these other, you know, the hedge, you know, and has just included things like, you know, night sky images. And because it is the Nocturna, it is supposed to sort of lean into the sort of creatures you see at night, things that are hidden. So, I mean, I love this little alligator. But yeah, I mean, this even has the snow. So I feel like unfair comparison could definitely happen between the Green Witch and the Nocturna. Please let me know if you'd like to see that. So yes, very excited about this one. I feel like this is going to be a much more usable sort of nature deck than the Green Witch. Okay. Along the same lines, we're just going to cut to the chase. I did purchase the Anima Mundi from Megan Wire-Wheaton as well. And this is a case where I purchased this deck several years ago when I just was getting back into tarot, and it didn't resonate with me at the time. I was just too new to tarot to really get the mileage out of it, I think. And so I had one of those, like, I shouldn't have sold it. I should have held on to it. This is a situation I'm finding myself in a lot these days, which is that sometimes a deck attracts me for one reason, but maybe doesn't work for me right away. If I hold on to it, I find that I have grown as a reader, and it becomes easier for me to use, or easier for me to interpret, or get into. So this one does include what animal is featured on each card in the guidebook, and a short description. This is they're not lengthy. There is but again, I think it's fine if you can accomplish what you need to in 3 or 4 sentences. There's upright and reversed meanings. Then your guidebook doesn't have to be 300 pages. It can be 64. But anyway, also, these are the same paper stock, I believe, as the Nocturna Oracle. It is linen with a gold metallic edge. I know a lot of people talk about the edges being sharp. I do not. I mean, these are foiled, but I don't think they're more sticky than they are anything else. I don't think they're as crispy around the edges. But anyway, so I'm delighted to have this deck back in my collection. I'm sorry that I sold the original deck that I had, but I feel like I am now in a place as a reader where I understand more of what's going on in these cards than I did 3 years ago. So I'm sure this happens to other people too. Like, there's a deck in your collection that you're like, nope, not working for me. I don't get it. The images don't speak to me. And then years later, you're like, sorry, did I say that? So yeah, very excited to have this. I did do a video recently where I compared this to Pagan Otherworlds, and I much prefer this deck over Pagan Otherworlds. But if you want to see the video, it's in I'll try to remember to link it. But anyway, it was just a silly little thing that I did because I feel like between the paper stock and the sort of painted style, there's a lot of similarities between the decks visually. So I just wanted to do a comparison. Okay, so next up is the Tarot Landscapes. This was, the book was written by Francesca Mattioni, and the illustrations are by Yoshi Mari. This is published by a company called Vivida. White Star Libri, I guess is what they're called. White Star Kids books. So not a regularly recognized publisher of tarot decks. So it's interesting to see sort of what they come up with. It'd been in and out of my wish list, and I finally just broke down and bought it. So this is a case where it's a tuck box inside of a slip box. I don't think that the tuck box was necessary. I know a lot of people don't like tuck boxes. I don't dislike them. I just tend to not have a real use for them. I mean, if the whole point is to get your deck from the store or wherever you're purchasing it into your hands without it being damaged, then I see nothing wrong with a tuck box. But I'm also the kind of person who, if a deck gets used regularly, I'm inclined to make a bag for it or purchase a bag. And in this case, I think this, if there was another thumb cutout, this all could have just fit into the box And there's, I mean, maybe the box could have been a little bit smaller, but you get my point, right? It didn't necessarily need the extra box. Okay, design critique over. Guidebook includes, for the majors, a full page image in color plus the description, and then at the bottom a positive and negative, which is sort of, I guess, their version of upright and reversed. I do prefer sort of when people describe it as positive and negative, or, you know, good vibe, bad vibe, or, you know, something else, because oftentimes it, even if you don't read reversals necessarily, the sort of reversed meaning can also often be interpreted based on how the card is positioned or what kind of question you're asking. So anyway, for the minors, there is a page for each one and just a small image just so you have a reference point for each of them. I suspect there's some reading and interpreting the tarot. There's a couple spreads, standard spread, like a standard 3 card, and then their landscape of life spread where you have 8 card layout. But I'm glad that I went ahead and purchased this. We'll get into the deck now. The backs are very pretty. The cardstock is sort of a matte finish cardstock. I would say it's probably fairly middle of the road for a company that doesn't normally make tarot cards. I can't hold it against them for not using, you know, black core cardstock or whatever. It's just, this was their first go maybe at doing this. So it is what it is. I wasn't sure if these were going to resonate with me, whether I was going to need more information than just sort of the landscape view. But as I flipped through this, I found that these images were a lot more intriguing than I had initially expected. So I do think that this deck has a lot to recommend itself. It is definitely a quiet deck, but I think that there's a lot to glean from this, and I think this is going to be a fun deck to work with and play a bit more with. I mean, just looking at this Lovers with the 2 mercats, I'm not sure what these are, but on each side of this stream with this bridge across it, and, you know, just my initial impulse is to look at this and be like making the choice to cross this stream or go over the bridge. Like, it's just that moment of like, what are we going to do? How are we going to meet in the middle, sort of thing. You know, so this strength card I looked up in the book because I was curious what their interpretation of this, and with the city in the background and then this bird hiding in these brambles, basically like in a city park. So it's like finding your strength, finding your safe place, which I thought was really a cool way to interpret it. So I'm not going to flip through all of these. I'm going to cut to some of the minors just to have a quick look at those. So I definitely feel like these will require a little bit of like reading the guidebook to understand where, like, what the message was that they are seeing or wanting to convey for each of these. I mean, this 10 of Swords is just these feathers floating, suggesting something bad happened, you needed to get away, rather than the classic, you know, 10 swords in the back kind of a vibe. So yeah, I mean, look at that Knight of Swords. Like, he means business. He is on the hunt. He is going, like, so a lot of these, like, I get an immediate read from just the character, the feel. I mean, look at, and the painting is beautiful. The artwork is so lovely and such a nice vibe. So anyway, that is the tarot landscapes. And the last deck is the Once Upon a Time Tarot, which I believe I did a comparison with one of the, was it the Fairy Tale Tarot? So I ended up deciding that I needed to purchase this deck specifically because it felt so similar to the Fairy Tale Tarot, and I wanted to be able to put them side by side and just get a feel for, are they similar, are they different? And I feel like this deck, one is Lo Scarabeo, it's Ilaria Fossey and Carol Ann Ashkenazi. But I really like Lo Scarabeo's cardstock. It definitely feels like playing card, like durable, thin but durable playing card material. The decks are not super large when you compare it with the size of the tarot landscapes. You can see it's a bit smaller. Not to say that the tarot landscapes is a standard tarot size, but just to give you a point of reference, the decks that I've had in my hand in the last 10 minutes. So definitely like easy for me to handle with my little baby hands. But what I discovered with this deck, just as I was sort of looking through it and playing with it, it does come with a guidebook, but because it's Lo Scarabeo, very short descriptions, but available in several languages. So I believe it's French, Italian, and English or something is what the guidebook is. Maybe it's German. I'll look. Okay, fine. So we have English, Spanish maybe? No, that's definitely Italian. Yeah, and then Spanish. So what I really discovered with the Once Upon a Time Tarot was that while there are definitely sort of references to certain fairy tales, you know, I mean, this very much feels like Little Red Riding Hood. Some of these are just cute. Like some of these characters are just sweet and cute. I'm assuming this is Alice. They feel playful, the illustrations. They very much remind me of Happy Tarot, which I don't actually own, and I kind of feel like these could sit side by side if you're looking for, I don't know, like a very approachable deck, because again, there is some sort of storybook, fairy tale elements, but also the illustration style is very manga, kind of feeling Sleeping Beauty and the Wheel. So I do feel like this is definitely, I think, a deck that, and I haven't used it for reading yet, so it might be very pointed despite its sweet and charming look. But again, mostly based on Rider-Waite-Smith, sort of in terms of the elements and sort of what the cards look like. So I think that they'd be fairly easy to read regardless of whether you recognize any of the fairy tales. Of course, Beauty and the Beast, Jack and the Beanstalk. But it's just, I mean, there's such a playful, and I love the energy and lightheartedness and all of this. I mean, like, what has he got in his little satchel? It looks like a doll of some sort who's like, I don't know if I want to be along on this ride. So, you know, is that his, you know, instead of a dog, or is it the chicken? But anyway, I just think that this is a fun deck, and I really want to use it. I'm looking for a good oracle deck to pair with it. Look at that Puss in Boots. I love that he's the magician. So fun. But yeah, so fun little deck. That is the last of the tarot decks that I've purchased this month. I do not think I will have a video like this for August. I think I have spent all the money I had for tarot decks in July. I wasn't intending on buying all these decks, but I think things, you know, the time was right. I went ahead and just bought them. They often were decks that I kept looking at, so it seemed like the right time. But yeah, do you have any of these decks? Do you like any of them? Have you repurchased any decks lately, like I did with the Anima Mundi? Do you have any decks that you feel as salty about as I do about the Green Witch Oracle? I really wanted to love it, and I think maybe that was why. Like other decks, I walked into with less expectation, and I feel like that maybe worked out better for me. I did not have sort of a preconceived notion about what the Tarot Landscapes was going to be, or the Talisman Oracle, or even the Whispers of the Ocean Oracle. So, and the same thing with Once Upon a Time. Like I didn't go into them with a lot of preconceived notions about how I was going to relate to the deck. And I think because I have seen many of the Green Witch Oracle or Green Witch books, I don't know, maybe that should have been a clue in. Sometimes those books feel a little scattershot too. No like I'm not trying, it's so hard. Like to review something and be honest about how I feel about something personally without necessarily sounding like I'm criticizing the creators. I get that there's a lot that goes into making anything, and oftentimes it is not the creator's decision to include what got included or name it the way that it got named, or, you know, anything like that. So I appreciate the effort, and I went into it with a real expectation that I was going to love it, which maybe was my own fault. If I had gone into it with less expectations, maybe I would have allowed it to be what it is, and maybe it makes sense that there's only 2 gemstones in it. I don't know. But anyway, so that is all of the decks that I purchased in the month of July. I'm embarrassed to admit I purchased this many just because I'm trying so hard to use the decks that I have rather than always looking for the next shiny new thing. I'm sure other people have the same feeling. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to creating another video for you soon. And I will see you then. Bye.